When participating in any exercise program, there is a possibility of physical injury and an increased load on the heart, which may result in dizziness, shortness of breath, and in extreme circumstances may result in a heart attack. If you experience any dizziness or pain, stop exercising immediately and seek medical attention as required. By participating in this exercise program, you agree to freely accept all associated risks, dangers, and hazards. The governors of the University of Alberta, their officers, employees, and volunteers are not responsible for any injury or loss of any kind sustained by you while participating. Consult your physician before beginning any exercise program.
Welcome to Natural Flow Yoga. I'm Chelsea, if this is your first round. I presume at this point in the session it may not be, but if it is, hi, here we are, back in the studio this week. I always have props available, so if you don't have fancy yoga props, totally no problem at all. Have things close by that you have at your house, like a belt or blocks or blankets or cushions, just in case you feel like you need it to support your practice today. Always keep in mind your class, your practice, your experience. So you don't have to do anything I say or do. If you want to change it, I really encourage participants and anyone to explore all of the postures, the movements, the different kind of flows that we'll move through, and know that it doesn't have to like follow any rules or look any certain particular way. So this is about fun, exploration, movement, mobility, taking a break from your desk if that's where you are this afternoon. So I have Brianne in the background, so if there's any questions or issues that come up during the class, you can pop a message into the chat box there, and Brianne can address questions. I do have my phone if she has to let me know if I need to address anything in the middle of the class. So here we are. For a change, I'm going to invite you to stand to start today. And again, you can start laying down, you can start seated, you can do this however you want. This is your time to take a break out of your Wednesday afternoon to move and flow in a natural way that's good and feels good for you. So just planting your feet in a way that feels comfortable. So usually hip distance apart is comfortable for most people. And if you want, you can just close your eyes here. We're just going to sort of get grounded standing. So sometimes it's helpful to just notice the connection of your feet into the floor. And so just feeling really firmly grounded, maybe pressing your toes down into the floor, feeling the texture of the mat or the carpet or the flooring that you're standing on. So oftentimes we swirl up here in our head. So let's bring our attention, our focus, our energy down into the ground, into our feet. I like to just kind of rock forward and back, side to side. And just noticing like where we're carrying our weight, if we kind of tend to shift to one side and like lean into one leg, or maybe kind of hang out in the heels, or maybe a little further forward. So I just kind of like to play around with that kind of side to side, forward, back, until I find that centered feeling. So I feel grounded through all four corners of the feet, super solid. Just taking a moment here to let go of your day. Coming into your space. Just take a few nice deep breaths to open as we're standing here, inhaling through the nose. Exhale out through the mouth. And again, deep breath in, just like as we did this when we were laying down. You can pause or hold the breath at the top of your inhale, so your own rhythm, what feels best for you. Inhaling. Pause, hold the breath at the top of your inhale, and push every last bit of air out through your mouth. Just take 3 more nice deep breaths like that. If you like that kinesthetic feedback of the hand on the abdomen, you can do that. Place your hand just right below the rib cage. The intent is just to keep the shoulders and chest nice and still and really expanding through the belly. So just finish one more, maybe a little bit fuller, deeper breath here. Let's take the arms out to the side. So I'm going to stretch the heels of my hands towards the side wall. So just reaching here. Think about dropping the shoulders down away from the ears. Think about, even if you may not move, but the intention is that the crown of the head lifts up towards the ceiling so that you're nice and tall. Shoulders are engaged here, but see if you can find some relaxation in balance with the tension that's required to hold the shoulders. Dropping the front ribs, finding the pelvis balanced. So just maybe a slight tuck under of the pelvis so that the rib cage, the bowl of the rib cage is stacked right over the bowl of the pelvis, so we have some engagement through the trunk. Good. Now from here, I have my hands splayed out open. I'm going to start by bending my pinky finger and then my ring finger, middle finger, pointer, wrapping my thumb around those four fingers and then just rolling out the wrists in one direction and then the other way. Good. Let's just let the arms float back down and just bring some movement into the shoulders. So again, this doesn't have to look a certain way, so I'm just rolling my shoulders out forward. If you've been sitting or doing any desk work today, maybe you're kind of got some tension built up in there, so just let it be nice and loose and fluid, rolling the shoulders out, maybe alternating one forward and then the other. Maybe making some bigger arm circles or starting with smaller arm circles and then making those arm circles a little bit bigger. And then when you're ready, moving in the opposite direction if you haven't yet started. And just imagine that you're rolling out tension out of the arms, maybe getting those arm circles a little bit bigger. Bigger arm circles. Maybe you did the one alternating one and then the other, doing that again. Balancing out that direction. And then we'll just plant the feet slightly wider than hip distance. We're just going to do some gentle trunk rotations. So I notice when people do this, they have like really rigid arms. I want you to think your arms are like ragdoll arms. So when I twist, I'm just lightly tapping the opposite shoulder and my arms are really floppy. I have a little bit of engagement through my core, so belly to spine. And I like to look straight ahead for this one because I get a little bit dizzy. I'm spinning up off of the ball of my opposite foot as I twist. And I'm just feeling a nice gentle opening through the shoulder that's gently swinging behind me and the chest. So just nice gentle chest, shoulder opener, trunk rotations. Maybe you get a few little creaks and cracks through your spine. Air pockets moving, one more each direction. Make sure we're breathing. Cool. And then just kind of wiggle that out however you wish. So we're going to come down onto the floor. And just starting, and we've done this quite a bit, but I love it for some wrist, warming up through the wrists and the hips and the spine also. So we'll start with wrist, hand, knee rocking. And we've just done some basic, so I'm just in this knee hand position here, and with my toes tucked, just sending the hips towards the heels, and then inhaling forward, shoulders stack over wrists, and then hips to heels. So you can just do maybe 3 to 5 repetitions like that. And then from here, I invite you to explore just different hand positions and movements of your spine and your hips. So I'm here externally rotating my hands so that my fingers point towards the side walls, and I'm just going forward and back, side to side, maybe making some circles around my wrists in one way and then the other. So again, just bringing some different movement and warming up through those wrists, playing with, again, different wrist positions. So I'm flipping my hands so that the tops of the hands are face down, and going just gently rocking side to side, forward and back. Bringing the fingertips around again. You don't have to follow me like as I'm doing it. If you just want to hold positions, but I just want you to kind of move, get some movement into the wrists, warm up that deep wrist extension that we kind of get a lot of, but we can get a lot of tightness into the forearms. So again, just breathe through this, feeling into the body, changing. And then when you feel complete with the wrist movements, we'll just move into a little bit more hip movement. So thinking about wagging your tail from side to side, articulating through the spine. So if you like that cat-cow, just that arch on the inhale, exhaling round, you can move through that. But I really invite you to make that your own kind of movement. So it could be a rounding, a flexion, and an extension of the side, maybe side flexion, gazing back towards one foot as you flex through the side body. Hip circles around the knees, maybe one way and then the other. So from here, I'm going to start moving through the hips a little bit more. So picking up one leg and just doing some hip circles in one direction. And then changing directions. Just opening and closing the hip. Always keeping a moderate amount of tension into the trunk to support your spine. From here, I'm just changing my orientation, changing sides. So making some hip circles with one leg, going one way, and then ensuring that we're moving in both directions, going the other way. Okay, from here into the hand-knee position, we'll do a similar, a hip mobilizing movement. So we'll extend one leg back, From here, think about engaging through your glute and the hamstring of the leg that's extended back behind you. The aim here is to lift that hip of your extended leg so it stacks over the knee of your bottom leg. And then we're going to roll that hip down and think about internally rotating that thigh bone in towards the midline of the body. So you may, if your hip mobility is a little bit limited, that's totally fine. So you may not have a lot of movement here, but that's okay. We're just working on that internal and external rotation of the thigh bone in the hip joint, working to stack as best we can that hip on top of the hip that's with the knee in contact with the ground. So just doing maybe 5 to 10 repetitions on one side. You should feel the glutes and the hamstring of that floating leg talking to you. It's a good thing. It's a nice hip mobilizing movement. We don't tend to get a lot of in our kind of daily life. So if you haven't yet, we'll just change sides. I'm just going to change my orientation again. So extending the other leg back. And before you lift, just begin to squeeze the glute of that extended leg. So nice extension, a lot of active engagement through that back leg. And then we're going to lift that leg up. I'm going to open my hip by lifting it. And again, if your movement is quite small, that's okay. So we just work with where our body is at. If we can stack the hip, ideally as best we can, keeping those shoulders square to the floor. So I'm really working on that internal rotation as I come down. Inhale, opening up that hip to stack over, and then rolling that hip down, internally rotating. Just really working on getting that full range of motion at the hip joint. And again, 5 to 10 repetition of that hip opener. And hopefully you're feeling that glute and that hamstring talking to you again here. Again, core engagement here to support the trunk. Make sure you're breathing. Good. Releasing that down once you feel balanced. You've done at least the same amount on each side. So now we're just going to do a little bit of hand-knee crawling. So we did start with some crawling last week, so nothing too crazy yet. Hand-knee would be knees not lifted. So again, knee-hand crawling and reaching. And by that I mean I'm just going to extend one leg, reach the other arm, crawl around. Feel free to explore your space. Reaching, extending. Think about that contralateral movement pattern. So when I pick up one hand, the opposite knee moves, and I can move laterally, and hopefully I can maintain that contralateral movement pattern. You're just practicing that, because that can be one of the things in crawling that kind of trips us up a little bit, is when we're just getting our mind to connect. So reaching with one hand and the opposite knee, crawling around your space, playing with different directions. Hopefully you have a soft surface, a cushy mat or a carpet or a blanket that you can use, because I know that a lot of work on the knees, if you have a hard floor, is not super comfortable. Okay, next we'll come into some lateral bending. So we did a little bit of this last week. I'm a big fan of tucked toes for a lot of our work. Just because our feet and our toes get so squished in shoes. So whenever I come into a flexed foot kneeling position as I'm in here. So my toes are tucked under. I'm sending my shoulders to stack over my hips. If that isn't comfortable for you right off the bat, then I encourage this flex foot knee hand rocking, and maybe you just begin to send your weight back towards your heels, but just lean your torso a little bit more forward so that you're not bringing all the weight of your torso to stack onto your heels. Because I know for some, if this position isn't familiar, or if we're not practicing it, your feet could be screaming at you, but it's kind of a nice movement. So inhaling forward to that knee hand position, and then exhaling, pressing back to come into that flexed foot kneeling position. And again, knee considerations, take that blanket or that cushion. You can still get that flexed foot benefit without that extreme flexion to the knees that may not be suitable for everyone at this time, but we work our way slowly so that we can build that mobility back into our bodies. Okay, so lateral flexion here. I'm just going to reach down to one side. And again, this is just a flowing movement. It doesn't have to be on my rhythm. You don't have to match my pace. Just think about hips and shoulders square to the front of the room. If your fingers don't touch the ground, I think I said this last week, I feel like I have short arms, so I don't actually get my full palm to touch the ground, and that's totally fine. So just reaching down the side body, reaching up and over, just getting some gentle side flexion, side bend, opening. Got a little bit of a tuck under my pelvis, and again, glutes are always active, core is actively engaged. Little variation of this one. We're going to take one leg out to the side. Both of my knees are in the same plane. So both knees are kind of flush with the long edge of my mat. I'm grounding down through the outer edge of my extended foot. I take that one hand down that extended leg, reaching up and over, pressing my hips forward, squeezing the glutes, staying really actively engaged through the quad of that extended leg, coming back up, and exhale if we can, taking that hand down to the floor, maintaining that connection and finding that nice long line of energy out through your fingertips from your heel of that extended leg, breathing, inhale gently, loading back up. Coming back to the tall kneeling position, and then we'll extend out with that other leg. So again, set up your position, both knees in line with the long edge of the mat, little squeeze with the glute, both legs engaged. So actively engaging through the quadricep of that extended leg, and pressing down through the outer edge of your extended leg. I'm going to take that hand down the extended leg, gently reaching up and over, squeezing the glute of that knee, the bottom knee, reaching up and past that bicep, nice deep side bend. Inhale back to center, and then exhale, reaching over, finding that nice long extended side angle. The palm comes down underneath the shoulder, great. And again, nice long, strong line of energy from your heel of that extended leg, reaching out through your fingertips, breathing here. Good. Inhale, gently use the strength of your core to float back up, bringing that leg back in. So we'll just come into some crawling transitions and some deep squats. And again, this is not, this is meant to be more of a flow, more organic. We have worked on some tripod transitions. So let's just have a little play. So working in that tripod, coming into that crawling position, coming back the other way, and then finding that inverted crawl position. So we haven't done too much with this yet, this inverted crawl position. We want to make sure that we're not sinking down into the shoulders, that we haven't lost our neck. So if you're here, you're depressing the shoulders down and away from the ears. We can work on this little hip scoot. This is a nice shoulder mobilizing movement. So I'm just using my hamstrings to draw my hips towards my heels and then pressing my heels away from my hips. From this inverted crawl position, I have my arms externally rotated, and I'm going to plant post through one arm and then just tripod transition back into that knee hand position, or maybe the foot hand position. So I just want you to have a little play here, maybe do a little bit of crawling. So same thing as our foot hand or knee hand crawl, contralateral movement pattern. You can have a little play here in this inverted crawl just by lifting one hand and one foot and then the other side. So you don't even have to actually go anywhere. Just see how that feels to move from those 4 points of support to 2 points of support, and maybe making it a little bit more fluid, coming back into that knee hand position. If you want to get a little bit spicy and warm a little bit through the body, we can start to do some of that foot hand crawling. Maybe coming into a deep squat from one of your transitions. Another good tool to have for a practice like this would be like a counterweight. So if you have something like a 10 or 20 pound dumbbell or weighted object, it can be really good if you have tight ankles like me to hang on in front of you. You can always hang on to something like a pole or something that's firmly anchored into your house, but then it can support you to get into that deeper squat position, to have that counterweight in front of you. Good. So from moving through these deep squat positions, playing a little bit more with some of these tripod transitions, moving from hand, knee. Again, we're posting with one arm, the arm that we're posting with, that leg extends. Just having a little play, exploring your space, exploring the movement, speeding it up, but always moving with mindfulness. We don't want speed to take away from position or quality movement. And we don't want speed to mask or hide inefficiency. So always better to work on form and technique before we move and get a little faster. So just spend a few more breaths playing around here in your crawl, maybe working forward and back along the length of your mat or your practice space. Okay, let's move a little bit into some rock ups and get ups. So again, if spinal rocking is not your friend, totally fine. I'll just recommend this bent sit spinal flexion and extension. You can always do this on your knees and hands, but we've been spending a lot of time there already today, so you can work on this position. If we're going to work on that spinal rocking, again, it's rounding through the spine, rocking up. I'm just going to rock up into a cross sit position and lean forward, and then my next one, I'm going to change the cross of my legs. So I just want you to play here again with rocking up into different positions. So we can rock up into that bent sit position, reaching through the knees. This one here is good, rocking up into our side bent sit, hinging over, rocking back, side bent sit, hinging over the other side. Again, cross sit. Trying to make this nice and smooth and always using the strength of your trunk and that rounding through your spine to make this efficient and easy. It should feel really effortless. So if you're finding that you're rocking back and you're really kind of having to like muscle your way through, think of bringing extra rounding into your spine and engaging more through your belly. So it is a core exercise, but it should feel efficient because it's just a body weight transfer. It's the transferring your body weight from one point to another that makes this more efficient. So let's rock up into a few other positions like we have, so we can come into this low crouch. Maybe you just want to spend a few moments kind of exploring these different positions as you rock up. We're going to eventually work into some get-ups here. So low crouch, making sure that we're switching sides. Here's a good one. Okay, a little bit different that we haven't tried before. I'm going to rock into the side bent sit position and then up into this tall split kneeling position. So I know we've seen those before, but just a different flow and sequence. Side bent sit to that tall split kneeling. Trying that a few times on each side. Ensuring that you have adequate cushion and support under those knees. Good. So just try one more in each direction of whichever variation of those get-ups or rock-ups that you're working on. Okay. So next, let's actually come into a get-up and then come back down. So I'm just doing a split squat get-up. So slowing this down, coming into this tall half kneeling position. Rocking up the other way, coming up a little taller, taking that foot back behind me, toes tuck under, a little bit more efficient, to then push up the ball of the back foot, stepping back. Let's just do that once more on each side, coming to a stand, however you'd like to do it. Maybe getting a little bit faster, but still moving with quality and control. Good. Coming up to your stand when you're feeling ready. Hopefully you've generated a little bit of heat in the body. So we're just going to come into some knee circles and a little bit more deep knee bends. So again, you're going to work with where your body is today and how things are feeling. So I'm just moving out the knees one way and then the other. Just think about nice extension through the spine. So nice long flat back, just knee circles around the ankles. And then again, just having a little bit of a play. So maybe we come down into this deep knee bend and we hang out here for a little bit. And if the deep knee bend again isn't for you, then just play with a little bit of balance. Maybe coming up onto the balls of the feet. So hovering those heels and then just slowly lowering down to your level of knee flexion. Maybe coming all the way down. Maybe we drop the arms and just relax through the shoulders and the arms. See if we can find this as a resting position. May not necessarily feel like that as our feet are working to support us. Core is engaged to support the balance on the balls of the feet. This one here, I like to kind of drop the knees down one at a time As always, we can use the hands as posts. We could take this into a little bit of a wider squat and just drawing one knee to the center and then the other. Again, working on that bit of ankle flexion as well, but also into the hips. And of course, knee flexion, if that isn't for you, guess what? Come up onto your feet and just bend your knees and start to kind of bend into one knee and then the other with the hips elevated above the knees a little bit more. Still getting that ankle flexion and that hip opening. Playing with the distance of your feet, so maybe getting a little bit wider, going from side to side, walking the hands from one foot to the other. Again, just giving you some options and different variations if you're like, geez, this deep knee flexion thing is not for me. And if it is, so like even coming down to one foot, the Cossack squat. This isn't actually a Cossack squat because my heel's lifted, but that's totally fine. But we can shift from side to side. If you have that ankle mobility to keep your ankle grounded down onto the floor in this movement, then you can try that. I'm just shifting my hips from side to side, staying nice and low. This is a good one if you have like a pole or something stable to hold on to. Another nice thing to have around is like a 2x4 or a tennis ball or a little dome to wake up the feet. So I know we've done a little bit of ankle mobilizing things, so let's just take one foot back behind us, top of the foot stretch, dropping the front ribs, and then just externally and internally rotating that thigh bone into the hip socket. So it's nice to have like a little collection of movement tools or props. Let's switch sides, so taking the other foot back. We can have these things that are standing workstations. So again, top of the foot back, rib cage drop down, and then just getting that gentle internal and external rotation of the thigh. Having a book also, if you don't have like a 2x4, so I'll do it with the foam block here. So just taking the ball of the foot onto an elevated surface, and just take a little step forward. So calf stretch. You can also use this. You can also use a tennis ball for that kind of thing. So again, some like really inexpensive but helpful little toys that we can have at our disposal. So from here with that the back leg straight that we're stretching, we're just going to bend that knee. Feel a different sensation or stretch into the calf. And then let's switch sides. So again, a book is totally, like a book that's like 2 inches high would be totally suitable. 2x4. Have a little chunk of it in your bathroom while you're brushing your teeth. Maybe at your standing workstation. So back leg straight, both toes pointing forward, front ribs down, and then bringing a little bend to that knee of the calf that you're stretching and feeling that just in a different place into the calf. And most of our shoes that we have these days have these lifts in the heels, whether even if it's just a running shoe, so our calves get quite short. Calf muscles short and tight. Okay. So we'll come into some standing hip movements, hip articulations here. So similar to how we were doing it from the knee-hand position, but adding a little bit more of a balance component. So I'm just opening up the hip one way and then ensuring that we're moving the other way. Nice. Using the strength of your trunk to maintain that balance, centered, and stability on that one side. Let's go to the other side when you're ready. We're just going about 3 to 5 repetitions in each direction. Of course, if you need to use your counter or chair to support with balance, don't hesitate. If you're feeling like balance is not super friendly for you today, we do want to work at it, but sometimes it's nice to just have that little safety support if we need it. Okay, so we did this from knee hand. We're gonna try it again from standing. Those we'll call them like a hip airplane. So we'll hinge forward, so finding your balance on one leg. I'm gonna hinge forward on that standing leg. I'm gonna open up the hip, so stacking that hip as best we can on the hip of the standing leg, and then roll it back down. And just doing about 5 repetitions. When I roll down, I actually do want to get an internal rotation of that hip so that you feel it at the outside of the leg and the outside of the hip of your standing leg. So we're opening up the hip and then rolling it down and internally rotating it so that you feel it on that standing leg. Really good for opening up those lateral, quad, and hip external rotators that we tend to get quite tight in. Speaking for myself, so at least 5 repetitions on one side, finding that airplane position again, using any support that you need for balance, opening up that hip, ensure that you're breathing. Remember, engaged core, engaged glutes. It's like my theme for every movement and posture that we find ourselves in. That's going to find that good engagement, helps us with our stability and our balance. Make sure you're breathing through this. Again, finding that internal rotation as you come down so that you can really feel it at the outside of the hip of that standing leg, and then as best we can, lifting that hip up. We call those hip airplanes. Give it a little shake. Last little standing thing of this theme, stepping over and stepping under. So big step, as if you're stepping over a hurdle of some kind, and then the other way. We'll step over a few times. So big hip circle, as if you're finding that little fence that you're stepping over. Okay, 2 times each direction. This time, feet hip distance apart, hip hinge forward. Take that, we'll call it the inside leg. Big step, you're stepping under an obstacle. We're gonna come down, swivel the torso, and then step up. Same way, hinge forward from the hip crease, big step over, swivel that torso, come up. Let's do that 2 more times. So hip hinge forward, step. You don't want to bump your head on that tree branch that you're stepping under. Nice and strong, long, flat back, strong through your trunk. There we go. Okay. Give it a little shake. A little wiggle, moving into some spinal articulations and some trunk rotations and hip circles. So last little bit of flowing movement. We'll finish with one little flowing sequence before we come down to the floor. So again, this doesn't have to look any particular perfect way. Just moving through the spine, hip hinging, maybe opening and extending the hips. So finding that hip hinge, we talk a lot about that here, finding that length through your hamstrings, and then squeezing the glutes as you extend your hips forward, just forward and back, side to side. That side to side one is nice to mobilize through the lateral hip and the thighs. Let's find that little hip hinge again, and then do that same movement. So just rocking the weight from one outer edge of the foot to the other. And then some circles, hip circles around your ankles, one way, and then the other. Such good things that we probably don't do enough of, just inviting movements into spaces of our bodies that may not see it very often or maybe ever. It's a good thing. Okay, one last little heat building flow sequence before we cool it down for the day. Let's take it to the top of the mat or wherever you are in your space. Inhaling, sweeping the arms high. Exhale, hinging from the hips. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant the palms, stepping back to your high plank. Glutes are engaged, rounding through that upper space between your shoulder blades, closing the bottom ribs towards your pelvis. Inhale. Exhale, pressing the hips back towards your downward facing dog. Hips nice and high, knees bended as much as needed. As always, feel free to take this one from the knees if the weight bearing into the upper body is not for you today in this moment. Arms can be extended with knees over hips. Okay, so just a little bit of a flowing sequence here. We're going to inhale, bring that right foot to the outside of your right hand. Drop the back knee. And then exhale, push back into that downward facing dog. Inhale forward, left hand to the outside of your, left foot to the outside of your left hand. I think I said something totally weird on the first one. That's totally fine. And then step back, downward facing dog. Let's do that one more time on each side. Inhale forward, drop the back knee down. Exhale back. Inhale, left foot forward to the outside of the left hand. Drop the back knee. Step back. This time, right foot forward to the outside of your right hand. And then instead of stepping back into the down dog, we're going to step into our foot hand position. So step back to foot hand with knees hovered. Left foot forward a little more gracefully maybe than I did. Step back to that hover knee. Right foot forward. Ball of the back foot is your back point of support. Step that foot back, knees hover. Left foot forward, right knee hovers. Good. Right foot forward again. Let's take that left hand, sweep the right arm high. Good, right hand down. Sweep left arm high. Inhale, reach. Exhale, sit your hip back towards your heel. Flex the toes of your right foot towards your face. Ideally, the spine is long and flat, but if you're rounded here, totally fine. We're just thinking about more of a hamstring opener here. Come forward to the ball of your right foot. We're going to step up, taking your back leg, squeezing that knee in towards the shoulder, standing up nice and tall, finding that balance, maybe giving that ankle a roll out one way and then the other. Now I'm going to change my orientation with the That knee that you're holding, we're going to cross it over the thigh of that standing leg, flex the ankle, and then sit back down into your little chair. Figure 4. We've done this pigeon. You can gently press the bent knee or the top knee down towards the floor. Top ankle is active. Inhale to stand, lifting that leg and back down. We'll do that on the other side. So inhale, take the arms high. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, half lift. Exhale, plant the palms, stepping back again to your high plank. Strong through your trunk. Inhale, exhale, hips high towards the ceiling. Inhale your left foot forward in between the hands. Lower your back knee. Inhale, sweep your left arm high. So closing that twist. Good. Take your left hand down to the outside of the left foot. Right arm reaches high. Good. Back toes tucked. Sending the hips back towards your back heel, flexing your left toes towards your face. Lengthening through the spine as best we can, but if there's a little bit of a rounding, that's okay. Again, finding that sensation at the back of the leg. Good. Coming forward into that low lunge position, we'll launch up the back foot and pick up your right knee, hugging the right knee in towards your right shoulder. Chest is lifted, shoulders are down and back. Core is nice and strong. Give that ankle a roll out one way and then the other. Good, then we'll cross that top leg, flexing the ankle of your right foot, gently pressing right knee down towards the floor. Hinging from the hip again in this figure 4, balancing, hip opening position. Core is strong to support your trunk. Body, core is strong to support your balance is what I meant to say. Breathing, maybe sinking a little bit lower, bending the knee of that standing leg. Inhale to stand. Hover that thigh parallel to the floor and slowly lower that down. Cool. Give it a little wiggle. Shake it out side to side. Hip circles. Give those legs a good shake out. Shake out through the arms. Started standing, we're going to finish standing. A little bit of a different flow and style of the class today. So, and the last thing we're doing is just going to bounce. Let it be super loose. Little bounce, you don't have to jump hard, so if you have neighbors beneath you, it doesn't have to be a big bounce. Bounce it out and just release any tension. This is a super nice way to re-energize your body if you're feeling kind of stagnant or stressed. Just kind of bounce out, wiggle, shake off any excess tension. Feels good. Get all those cells and molecules and atoms fizzing like a can of Coke, so you're nice and energized for your afternoon. Okay, let's finish with 3 deep breaths standing. Taking the arms up high, inhale. And exhale, hands down through the midline of the body. Balanced, centered, stable. Again, inhale, taking the arms high. And exhale. And one more time, breathing in, gathering up all the energy that's around you. Exhale, bringing that down through the center midline of your body. Finding strength. And you can finish with your eyes closed. If you would like to take your standard or traditional Shavasana to close your practice, I certainly welcome you to, if you have that time in your day. This concludes our Wednesday natural movement flow. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any specific questions, comments, or requests, you are welcome to put anything into the little chat box there, and I can address those. And as always, if you have any like specific questions that you want to address, you can certainly request my email address, and I can have a little chat. So that's an option for everybody as well. So thank you again for joining us, and happy Wednesday. Enjoy your Shavasana if you are taking a few moments to finish in silence. So happy Wednesday to everybody.